Now, I invite our sister, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Amina Mohammed, to deliver her statement.
Your Excellency, Mr. Paul Kagame, the President of the Republic of Rwanda and the Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency, Mr. Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz, the President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Your Excellency, Mr. Musa Faki Mohammed, the Chairperson of the African Union, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the United Nations, I would like to begin by thanking His Excellency, President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz, the government and people of Mauritania for their warm welcome and hospitality. Excellencies, I am deeply honored to be with you today in the spirit of mutual trust, respect, and solidarity. And I thank the Chair and the members of the African Union for the kind invitation. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, places great importance on our long-standing but newfound strategic partnership with the African Union. Sustainable development is at the center of our work. Africa's Agenda 2063 and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development share a common vision, and together they provide the basis for the African Union United Nations Partnership Framework for Development, informing an action plan soon to be launched in Addis in the coming days. Peace and stability are also our shared goals. The joint AU-UN framework for enhanced partnership in peace and security is our roadmap for resolving crises, silencing the guns, averting the eruption of armed conflicts, and above all, preventing human suffering. Today, we are working together with some success across the continent. With Africa firmly in the lead, we do need to do more to strengthen this partnership. Excellencies, too often, the world views Africa solely through the prism of problems, thus shaping the wrong narrative. I would like to see the world to see what I see and know as a daughter of this soil. I see continuous progress and enormous dynamism across Africa in spite of the huge challenges. Entrepreneurship is thriving, access to all levels of education has increased, child and maternal mortality has declined, and more women are serving in decision-making roles. We only just have to look at the 50-50 parity we see in the African Union Commission with our women of substance. Economic growth in several countries is higher than other parts of the world, and the continental free trade area is a vital step that will unleash trade and innovation to benefit millions. I see African leaders taking the lead to resolve African crises and building stronger architecture within the African Union to support these efforts, including through the current reforms, preventive diplomacy, and peace operations support. I see the potentials of the African Union's Great Green Wall that can protect millions of people from the impacts of climate change and desertification, while integrating renewable energy access, investments in many value chains that place Africa at the forefront of the climate action. I see one of the most reliable contributors to United Nations peacekeeping operations, where over more than half of those troops and police in today's United Nations missions are from Africa. I see a generous humanitarian actor. Africa hosts more than a quarter of the world's 65 million refugees and displaced persons, showing a solidarity that is often missing elsewhere in our world. I also see a continent where women have led the way, not only in galvanizing economic growth, where the opportunity has arisen, but also in diffusing social tensions and forging peace. And I see a determination to address governance, build accountable institutions that serve Africa's people. The African Anti-Corruption Year is a welcome initiative to crack down on bribery, fraud, tax evasion, illegal mining and logging, and other illicit acts that drain billions of dollars from Africa every year and undermine our trust in global governance, sadly impacting investments that undermine growth in African economies. Excellencies, Africa's transformation is clearly underway, and the United Nations will continue to reinforce our support in words and deeds. Through the AU Joint Framework on the Implementation of Agendas 2063 and 2030, we will ensure that your priorities are ours. By aligning policy, programming, accountability, we can amplify impact at the country and regional levels. We are collaborating to advance democratic governance, women's empowerment, job creation for young people, human rights for all, and efforts to combat terrorism and violent extremism. We will continue to support Africa's electoral processes and the demographic dividend roadmap, as well as your efforts to address inequalities, exclusion, and marginalization. But in this, we must place our youth, especially our girls, at the center of all investments. We are enhancing our partnership to address global health pandemics, including our joint efforts to combat the recent outbreak of Ebola on the continent. And we are strengthening support for Africa's peace efforts, including AMISOM, the G5 Sahel Joint Force, the multinational Joint Force against Boko Haram, as well as capacity building to counter and prevent terrorism and violent extremism. Here in Mauritania this week, we are announcing a recalibrated strategy for the Sahel and a new effort to mobilize resources. This recently finalized UN support plan for the Sahel is repositioned to channel resources towards interventions and investments that meet the needs and priorities within the plans of the Sahelian people and countries in the context of really complex challenges. In the days ahead, AU and UN leaders, including myself, will undertake a joint mission to Chad, to Niger, to South Sudan, for a focus on advancing peace and development through equality, empowerment, and the well-being of young people, especially our women and girls. In conclusion, Excellencies, as Africa drives its own future, the international community must meet its responsibility to support your efforts with investments that yield results and are underpinned by transparency and accountability. The United Nations stands in solidarity with you in serving Africa's people and ushering in a future of security, opportunity, and dignity for all. I thank you.